Day one of jury selection of the criminal trial of Sean P. Diddy Combs has begun. We learned about potential celebrities who might be mentioned at this trial, a theft of a wand at the Harry Potter store, Combs apparently admitting he's nervous, and whether or not we can actually get an impartial jury to hear this monumental case. This is a full recap of the day and what you might have missed in court. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is another Law and Crime legal alert. So lawsuits allege that antacid use has been linked to increases in stomach cancer and gastric cancer. Yeah, so if you or a loved one have been diagnosed with stomach cancer or gastric cancer after using an antacid, you may qualify for compensation. One of our legal sponsors is partnering with the Driscoll Law Firm. This is a national firm helping those injured to ensure their claims are thoroughly presented. Visit antacidclaims.com/sidebar. Scan the QR code on screen to answer.
The courtroom was in chaos. Gasps echoed as a shocking new video surfaced, showing Diddy lunging forward in what many believe was an attempt to harm the judge. The footage spread like wildfire online, leaving millions speechless. Was it desperation, rage, or something much deeper? Now the entire world is watching. The trial of Sean Combs, globally recognized as Diddy, has become more than just a legal proceeding. It's a front row seat to the unraveling of one of music's most powerful figures. What began as a quiet hearing on his latest legal troubles exploded into something nobody could have expected. Just days ago, a new piece of footage emerged from inside the courtroom. The security camera clip, now confirmed as authentic by multiple insiders, appears to show Diddy rising from his seat and surging forward in a burst of fury. The judge had just denied his team's latest motion for bail, and seconds later, chaos ensued, though court officers intervened immediately. The moment was intense enough to send shockwaves across the entertainment world. What we're witnessing isn't just a case of a celebrity under fire. This is the collapse of a myth, a public figure once revered for his empire building and success. It's caught in a spiral of controversy, pressure, and perhaps psychological unraveling. Diddy's team has
all of these big dick deviants is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. TGJ, any of them, all lies will be exposed. That's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way. The truth is the light.
I need to have another one of these.
Amen, amen.
Gee. I kind of get this one here.
Right.
After that, I don't really kind of know where to go. Let me, one more time.
Right.
We good now?
Because the people want to know, well, why would he get blackballed?
Yeah,
oh, because,
I was gonna ask you that.
Because in 30 years, I've done nothing but collect information, knowledge, and your secrets. So if you and a man
has neither confirmed nor denied the authenticity of the footage, but sources close to the courtroom confirmed that the judge was escorted out immediately after the incident and proceedings were suspended. One insider described the moment as a breakdown, plain and raw, like something inside him finally cracked. Adding to the frenzy, Diddy himself has now released a public statement from behind bars. In a message shared through his legal team, he said, "I've been pushed to the limit. They don't see what's being done to me behind the scenes. This isn't justice. It's a performance, and I'm tired of playing the role they've given me." The statement, while not addressing the alleged attempt directly, highlights a man who feels cornered, hunted, and perhaps misunderstood. His legal troubles have been stacking up for months, but this moment, the lunge, the flash of fury, may be what cements this chapter of his legacy in the public's mind. Since the footage went viral, reactions have flooded every platform. Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube are ablaze with frame-by-frame analyses of the moment. Some fans are in disbelief, insisting that it must be a doctored video or a misunderstanding. Others are more cynical, claiming that this was the inevitable climax of months of pent-up stress and scrutiny. But no matter where people stand, one thing is clear: Diddy has become
and was in a corner doing something you wasn't supposed to be doing.
You will tell it.
No, somebody come to tell me.
Okay.
I gather that, I value that, I'll pay for that. Come, tell me. I know so many things I shouldn't know, and they all know it. They all know it. Why? Because you don't make me the villain. Not the guy that raises black children and ain't never done a hard drug in his life and don't have no stories of doing nobody dirty. And they'll just go out and they'll lie. The industry doesn't mess with Cat because he didn't show up for the studio. No studios have ever said that. Look at my IMDb. It will show you that no studio has ever lost money with me on the script. How? That's why I'm saying, that's why I can't let Ricky Smiley say he was supposed to play Money Mike, because I wrote the words for Money Mike. I designed the hair for Money Mike. I collaborated with the wardrobe department and made outfits to make sure that no one in America would be wearing what
the center of the most explosive courtroom saga of the year. The courtroom where the drama unfolded is now under increased security. Several eyewitnesses have spoken to media outlets, describing the moment with striking similarity. He didn't shout, he didn't scream. It was just sudden, a burst of energy like a man who lost control for a second, one observer reported. Another noted that the courtroom staff moved instantly, like they were expecting something might happen. But how did we even get here? Just a year ago, Diddy was still considered a dominant force in music and business. His brand, his collaborations, his parties. Everything he touched had an aura of luxury, power, and invincibility. But underneath that glamour, many now claim something darker was brewing. Legal filings, investigations, and leaked testimonies have been pointing to a man who may have been living a double life. The courtroom footage is just the latest thread in a tangled web of allegations and legal warfare. Throughout this process, Diddy has maintained a firm stance of defiance. "I'm not running," he said during an earlier interview before being taken into custody. "Let them come. Let them. Bring it. I've survived worse." Those words now carry a different tone in the shadow of this explosive incident. For many watching, the footage isn't just
who did not or who were not familiar with these certain people. Now, as far as places goes, I don't know the full extent of what was asked as far as places goes, but there was this one juror who did kind of talk about a hotel, the Essex House Hotel, that was on the list of places that prospective jurors were asked about. And this juror in particular, he just said, you know, he had worked at this particular hotel sometime last year and all of that sort. Now, as far as some of the other questions that were asked, you know, they were asked simple questions as far as, do you know any additional information about this case? Do you have any training in addictive treatment, domestic violence, sexual abuse? Do you have any views about prosecutors or law enforcement? Have you been involved in legal issues such as a lawsuit, such as a criminal case? Have you been a victim of a crime? Do you have feelings about law enforcement, hip-hop artists, witnesses testifying under immunity, witnesses also testifying under a pseudonym? And is there any reason that you wouldn't be able to serve as a prospective juror? Now, some of these questions, especially when it comes to
just an isolated event. It's the emotional climax of months, maybe years of internal turmoil. The judge involved, whose identity is being kept from the public for security reasons, has reportedly requested to be removed from the case. While no injuries were reported, the judge's security team has since increased protection, citing concerns over further outbursts. Legal experts now debate whether this incident could be classified as a criminal attempt or simply a breakdown under pressure. Either way, it adds another layer of difficulty for Diddy's defense team, which is already battling multiple lawsuits and federal investigations. Meanwhile, supporters of Diddy argue that the entire legal process is biased and media-fueled. They're trying to make an example out of him, said one industry peer. This is a man who's built empires and shifted culture, and now they want to strip him of everything in public. But others argue that his fame doesn't give him immunity. We have to hold everyone accountable. Fame doesn't excuse behavior, stated one former collaborator who chose to remain anonymous. Diddy's emotional and mental state has become a central point of speculation. Sources inside the detention facility report that he's been isolated for much of his time, interacting only with legal counsel. He's said to be quiet, focused, and deeply stressed. But there have also been
questions too, and maybe we'll put it up. But Elizabeth, you give us a general brief idea about what were some of the questions they were asked?
Well, some of the questions included just people and places, whether or not there was a whole laundry list of celebrities and whether or not these prospective jurors were familiar with them. You know, they range from Kanye West to Michael B. Jordan to Young Miami to Dallas Austin, who's a music producer, to Harve Pierre, who actually was named as one of the defendants in one of Diddy's civil suits. And so prospective jurors were asked who they knew, and most of them were very honest about their answering. They were like, you know what, I don't know them personally, but I do recognize, for example, Michael B. Jordan from movies. Obviously, Sinners is very popular right now. So, of course, that is probably going to be the name most were able to answer yes or no to. But I was kind of surprised at how many people didn't know of these like laundry lists of popular celebrities, especially when you have names like Kanye West on there, especially when you have names like, you know, Michael B. Jordan, that type of sort. But there were some prospective jurors.
Moments of what insiders described as extreme mood swings, from calm reflection to sudden agitation. These descriptions, combined with the courtroom footage, are now prompting discussions around whether mental health. Professionals will be brought in to evaluate his state. His legal team is preparing a motion to challenge the way the footage has been circulated. This trial is being litigated on social media. One of his attorneys told the press, "We're going to ask for a full review of the court security protocols and how this leak even happened. The footage never should have left that room." Their argument is that the viral moment could prejudice public opinion and interfere with jury selection or future rulings. But legal analysts say that once the video hit the internet, the damage was already done. Despite everything, Diddy seems determined not to fade into silence. A second statement released days later from his holding cell reads, "They think they know me. They think they've seen everything. But this isn't the end. It's just another storm, and I've weathered storms before." The words resonate with his fans, many of whom have begun trending the hashtag #StandWithDiddy in a show of support. Meanwhile, critics argue that those words sound more like a deflection than an explanation. The psychological profile of someone under this level of scrutiny and collapse is complex.
Rain. Now, this does speed up the process, but it also limits how much Diddy's team can grill people directly, so they have to be strategic and surgical. Let's also not forget that it looks like they lost the judge's trust early on. I'm just saying, okay? So, how these strikes work. The voir dire, each side gets a certain numbers of strikes, okay? The strikes are basically saying, yeah, you're out, you're out, you're out, right? One, there are two ways lawyers can kick someone off the jury. Challenge for cause. This is when someone says something crazy, like, yo, Diddy was always innocent. I hate Cassie, right? If the judge says, and you could be like, Your Honor, bias. We move to strike voir dire. If the judge agrees they're biased, they're out. But the judge doesn't have to agree. There's also preemptory challenges, okay? Each side is going to get a limited number of these, usually 6 to 10 in federal court, depending on the case. No
Experts say that the pressures of fame, lawsuits, potential financial ruin, and public humiliation can combine into a mental cocktail that leads to erratic behavior. It's not uncommon for high-profile individuals to experience emotional breaks under courtroom stress, one behavioral psychologist commented. What matters is how the court interprets those breaks and whether they present a danger. Right now, Diddy's next hearing is being rescheduled pending an internal court investigation into the incident. Meanwhile, media trucks are camped outside the facility, social media is flooded with commentary, and YouTube channels continue to break down the incident frame by frame, replaying it with captions, slow motion, and analysis. It's become a global phenomenon. Whether this moment marks the collapse of Diddy's empire or a turning point toward redemption remains to be seen. What's clear is that nothing will ever be the same again. The courtroom, once a place of deliberation, has become a stage for drama more intense than any reality TV show, and Diddy, like it or not, is at the center of it all. Stay tuned as we continue to follow this unbelievable story as it unfolds. If you want the real story behind the headlines, hit that subscribe button now and don't miss a single update on the wildest trial the entertainment world has ever seen.
And was in a corner doing something you wasn't supposed to be doing?
You will tell it.
No, somebody come to tell me.
Okay.
I gather that, I value that, I'll pay for that. Come, tell me. I know so many things I shouldn't know, and they all know it. They all know it. Why? Because you don't make me the villain. Not the guy that raises black children and ain't never done a hard drug in his life and don't have no stories of doing nobody dirty. And they'll just go out and they'll lie. The industry doesn't mess with Cat because he didn't show up for the studio. No studios have ever said that. Look at my IMDb. It will show you that no studio has ever lost money with me on the script. How? That's why I'm saying, that's why I can't let Ricky Smiley say he was supposed to play Money Mike, because I wrote the words for Money Mike. I designed the hair for Money Mike. I collaborated with the wardrobe department and made outfits to make sure that no one in America would be wearing
questions too, and maybe we'll put it up. But Elizabeth, you give us a general brief idea about what were some of the questions they were asked?
Well, some of the questions included just people and places, whether or not there was a whole laundry list of celebrities and whether or not these prospective jurors were familiar with them. You know, they range from Kanye West to Michael B. Jordan to Young Miami to Dallas Austin, who's a music producer, to Harve Pierre, who actually was named as one of the defendants in one of Diddy's civil suits. And so prospective jurors were asked who they knew, and most of them were very honest about their answering. They were like, you know what, I don't know them personally, but I do recognize, for example, Michael B. Jordan from movies. Obviously, Sinners is very popular right now, so of course that is probably going to be the name most were able to answer yes or no to. But I was kind of surprised at how many people didn't know of these laundry lists of popular celebrities, especially when you have names like Kanye West on there, especially when you have names like, you know, Michael B. Jordan, that type of sort. But there were some prospective jurors.
They feel confident in getting an acquittal here or putting the prosecution's feet to the fire. I want to move on to a little bit about what happened today. You and I have spoken earlier today about who was there for him, attorneys there for him. Mark Garagos now there is in a more of a consultant role. So you have the attorneys, you have the prosecutors in court. I want to talk about the jury. Okay, so it's my understanding that prospective jurors came in last week. They filled out these questionnaires. And based on their responses, that number is going to be ultimately whittled down to the jurors who were selected in this case. So first, before we even get into the ins and outs of what jurors said in court, can you just give us a brief snapshot of what were some of the questions that these jurors were asked in their questionnaires, because that became a big focus of their today, what their responses were. So, and I know, and by the way, just to let everybody know, a little while ago, the court actually released preliminary instructions in this case, and some of those questions.
However, it's somebody who has been very who Diddy is obviously very familiar with, that being his son's other brother from a different relationship, because it's a tangled family web as far as everything goes with the family and everything like that. But while Justin Combs wasn't inside the courtroom, his brother was, and I think Diddy kind of looked at both of those two associates and then Justin Combs' brother kind of as support, kind of as like a nice presence to be inside the courtroom, because I do think he relies a lot on the support of his family and of his loved ones to be inside that courtroom. But again, we still have 2 more months of trial, so I assume, you know, his mother, his daughter, maybe possibly his daughters, but at least bare minimum his sons will be inside that courtroom. If they'll be there every day, that's a wait and see, but I'm sure for opening statements they definitely will be.
And I got to say, I'm not surprised. If he meant it, he's nervous. Look, it's not only decades. He could potentially face life in prison if he's convicted of the most serious charge. And look, his defense team was pushing forward to get this in front of a jury as soon as possible. It seems
we've kind of presumed that as well, too, because obviously since he's been incarcerated, his hair has been great. He did come in today. His face wasn't completely shaven, so his goatee was a little white as well, too. But when he had first come into the courtroom, he did what he usually does. He hugged all of his attorneys. He looked outside, or he looked into the gallery to see who was there as far as family goes. Unfortunately, no immediate family was inside the courtroom today. But again, we have 2 more months to go of trial, so it's likely that they'll be here for opening statements. But that's, you know, unclear as far as what family members will be there at what times, that type of sort. But as far as today inside the courtroom, it was really that associate or member of his entourage who, again, was wearing that free puff hat, that free puff sweatshirt. But instead, he had to flip it inside out, as we probably presumed, because those prospective jurors are going to be coming into that same courtroom where we're sitting as the press, where his associates are sitting. So he had to turn that shirt inside out. And what I did also spot was Justin Combs' brother inside the courtroom, too. Now, with Justin Combs' brother, we have to remember that he is not Diddy's son. So Diddy looked completely different from his pretrial hearing in that he wasn't wearing the standard issue khaki tan jumpsuit provided by MDC. Instead, he looked a lot different. And as we know from the last judge's order that was made last week, Diddy is allowed to wear normal attire, but he looked a little similar to what I kind of presume to be a choir boy. So he came in with a blue pullover sweater. He had a white collared shirt. He had navy slacks. Couldn't get a look at his shoes, but of course we know from the judge's order that he is not allowed to have laces on those shoes. So it's unclear if he had just shoes with no laces, wearing loafers. Couldn't see from where I was inside the gallery, because I was even lucky to get inside that courtroom today, because let me tell you, Jesse, it is inundated with so much press from honestly around the world. This is not just a nationwide case. There are international outlets out here as well too, trying to get inside that courtroom, trying to get a peek at Diddy. And I thankfully was one of the lucky few to get inside, because I think they were only allowing about 10 or 15 people from the press, because the rest had to be filled with a lot of prospective jurors. So the side where normally the defense's side sits or normally the family sits, instead that entire side was empty, at least for the first half of court today, mainly because we had to put in all those jurors. And I know we're going to talk about that more in a second. But as far as Diddy goes today, his demeanor seemed upbeat at first, but then there was a moment, I think it was a little bit before the lunch break, where Diddy kept having to go, take some restroom breaks in between the prospective jurors' questions and that type of sort. And then he uttered something that I found to be pretty astounding given how confident and upbeat he appeared. He said, "Your Honor, I'm a little nervous," which is something that finally you kind of see the mask slip off a little bit, where it's like Diddy is finally admitting the weight is kind of coming on to him as far as having to go to trial for these federal charges that he's facing. And of course, that being 5 federal charges that he's facing, which could carry, if he is sentenced or if he is convicted on these charges, could carry decades in prison. So it's a lot of weight on his shoulders.
Where he allegedly abused, threatened, and coerced women to fulfill his sexual desires, including engaging in prolonged or extensive or elaborate sexual performances, sometimes known as freak-offs, that included sex workers. They're the underlying predicate acts that need to be proved, at least 2 need to be proved in order to get the racketeering charge, these underlying crimes that make up the larger pattern of criminal racketeering activity. So whether that be kidnapping, forced labor, arson, sex trafficking. And speaking of which, counts 2 and 4 are sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion of victims 1 and 2, namely that Combs intentionally harbored, transported, enticed these alleged victims to cause them to engage in commercial sex acts using force, fraud, or coercion. Commercial sex acts meaning something of value was exchanged or promised. Counts 3 and 5, transportation to engage in prostitution, namely that Combs allegedly transported victims and commercial sex workers for purposes of sex work, for purposes of prostitution. And now we need a panel of 12 jurors with potentially 6 alternates to sit and hear this case in Manhattan federal court. And it's being reported that 150 potential jurors are being brought in. So what did day 1 of jury selection look like in Sean Combs' criminal case? Well, since there are no cameras allowed in federal court, we have with us our very own eyes and ears about what happened in that courtroom today. Law and Crimes reporter Elizabeth Milner was there. Elizabeth, so good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jesse.
So I'm going to start with the question I always ask you. How did Diddy look? What was he wearing? And who was with him?
Well, today was a lot different, obviously, because it's day 1 of jury selection, or to some, they consider it day 1 of the trial.
Day 1 of jury selection of the criminal trial of Sean P. Diddy Combs has begun. We learned about potential celebrities who might be mentioned at this trial, a theft of a wand at the Harry Potter store, Combs apparently admitting he's nervous, and whether or not we can actually get an impartial jury to hear this monumental case. This is a full recap of the day and what you might have missed in court. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey everybody, this is another Law and Crime legal alert. So lawsuits allege that antacid use has been linked to increases in stomach cancer and gastric cancer. Yeah, so if you or a loved one have been diagnosed with stomach cancer or gastric cancer after using an antacid, you may qualify for compensation. One of our legal sponsors is partnering with the Driscoll Law Firm. This is a national firm helping those injured to ensure their claims are thoroughly presented. Visit antacidclaims.com/sidebar. Scan the QR code on screen to answer less than 10 questions and check your eligibility to file a claim. It's official. We're here. The start of United States versus Sean P. Diddy Combs. What began with his arrest in September of 2024, an indictment on federal sex crimes charges, now brings us to May 5th, 2025, the start of his trial, the start of jury selection, to be more precise. Can't believe we're here. I've said it before. I've said it again. The idea of this going to trial in under a year from his arrest and indictment at the federal level, Very, very rare. But he has been speeding his way towards trial, wants his day in court, and now we are here. So this case has changed a lot too since September, by the way. Over the last several months, his indictment has been amended. We're now at his third superseding indictment where he's facing 5 counts. Count 1, racketeering conspiracy. So that's that Combs and others allegedly created a criminal enterprise using the resources and personnel of his multifaceted business empire.
Who hold strong opinions about hip-hop culture, nightlife, or gender-based violence, and detect bias around his wealth, his race, masculinity, or celebrity entitlement. Okay? Now, why this matters? Well, because, and this is the most important thing, obviously, if the questionnaire gives the defense team a first impression, they're going to flag certain answers to dig through their voir dire. However, if someone says, I don't use social media, but later the defense finds their Reddit account trashing Diddy, that person could be dismissed or become a reason for a mistrial later. You guys. And more important, the more revealing the questionnaire, the better the chances of identifying hidden bias before it poisons the verdict. Now, important, can Diddy argue for a delay or change in venue? Absolutely, and he can use that if people lie about the jury. Now, again, to let the media frenzy cool off, if something major
people with Diddy, where you had like certain people that were just Diddy friends. You know, we got to know them throughout time, but they would pop up at the parties in San Tropez, pop up in the parties at Cannes. You know, these were just his personal friends. So they would do ecstasy and everything else together. You know what I'm saying? Felix stayed at the house and everything else like that. So I've never actually seen them do anything physical.
So she got fired.
Right.
There was this comedian named the Fat Jew who said that he walked into a party on Star Island and he saw Diddy spooning with this one gay DJ named Felix the House Cat.
Yeah, that's my man, Felix.
You know Felix?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Was there a relationship of any sort between Felix and Diddy?
I can't say yes and I can't say no. I've never seen them do anything, but he was one of the in crowds. He was one of the in anything like that, but I do know Felix well.
Yeah, you know, and Felix is openly gay.
Right.
From what I understand. And I mean, this is where the gray area comes in. You don't know. You know, I've taken ecstasy before and you get real like, yo, I love you, man. Like you touch on, you know,
right.
You're not touching on dudes sexually, but you hug them, I love you, man. You know, kiss
right.
them, you know, like in the forehead or something, you know.
Right.
And it's like at the time, it's just like, yo, man, you know, it's not a gay thing.
Right.
But it's just like you. I mean, there's always been the gay rumors about
right.
Diddy. I remember when I interviewed Wendy Williams. She got fired from the radio in New York because she basically said she had seen some pictures of Puffy with some men. And he basically called the radio station and said, you either fire her or I'm going to sue you.